Okay, we're back with segment 2. Our special guest is Travis Diener, the hero of the basketball tournament. Drilled the three, the dagger from the right-hand side. And this is a Pip and Dodds podcast. Pip is on assignment today. We're also linking this over at MarquetteHoops.com, which is part of the 24/7 network. It's owned by CBS Sports. And we'll have the Travis interview linked. We also have 2 interviews I conducted with Dwayne Killings, the assistant coach at Marquette, regarding Marquette's new offense this year, how the new players will change it, and also what DJ Carton, the transfer from Ohio State, will do, what to expect, and any changes in the Marquette offense. So we'll go back to Travis Diener. Travis, go back to the TBT team. What type of offense did Joe Chapman run? Was it basic? Was it things that you ran? The concepts that Tom Crean had? Was it Buzz Williams? Was it what things you ran in college, or was it just simple because you had Elgin Cook and some other people that didn't go to Marquette?
Yeah, no, it was a lot of just spacing, playing with tempo. So I think it was a combination of everything, but we just tried to really play fast and move the ball. And I think that's what you see with Crean's offense now, and with all the way Wojo plays. You play with pace, you pass, you move. And obviously, at times, it can be a little harder when you have pros, because pros are so good in isolation basketball as well. So Joe gave us a lot of freedom to kind of be ourselves and make plays. But at the same time, when we needed a play, would draw something up that he's used, throughout his AAU programs. And thankfully, a lot of the stuff worked.
A couple questions from our website. What's next in store for Travis Diener? Do you want to get into coaching? Do you think that coaching's nuts because you spend much time away from your family? Do you want to maybe coach your kids? What are you looking at?
Yeah, that's a good question. After the past week or so, things have been kind of crazy, and I always want to sit back and kind of reflect on what's happened. And there's a lot of uncertainties obviously there's a lot of uncertainties in America, but there's uncertainties in Europe as well for my career. So I don't really know. I think basketball will always be a part of my life. So when I am done playing, I'll stick with something that involves basketball. I just don't know at what capacity just yet.
When you look back at your career at Marquette, you played for Tom Crean, and then you worked on the staff for a year or so, or a little bit more, for Steve Wojciechowski. Could you compare those two and their philosophies and work ethic?
Yeah, I mean, there are obviously two different personalities. I think a lot of this stuff though is similar. They're very, very competitive, high intensity. I had Coach Crean when he was very young in his college coaching career, so I think he was a lot more difficult to deal with at that time. He was obviously had a lot to prove. He was tough and demanding, which I think are some similarities with Wojo. But Wojo comes from obviously a tree of coach, arguably the greatest collegiate coach of all time. Passion, intensity, it's all there, and I think that reflects on the way guys play. And I think that's kind of how I was as a player, and I would be as a coach as well. As very competitive, intense, passionate, kind of how you've seen me play.
The best description I've heard of some of these coaches is they're like the CEO of a .com company, where you basically sleep at the office. You work 24/7 for about 5 to 7 years. You're absolutely nuts when it comes to recruiting. You're recruiting 24/7, but you have to spend time for your family too. And I remember you told me that Wojo allowed that. Wojo understood that. Wojo would allow people to go home and, hey, see your families, get the heck out of here.
Yeah, like you said, at that level, at the high Division I level, you sacrifice a lot, in my opinion, that these college coaches, they sacrifice too much of their personal time. And I understand you have to recruit, you have to do, you have to be prepared, all that. I understand that. And like you said, it's like running it's like running a company, being the head basketball coach, especially at a program like Marquette where, basketball is the sport, and that's where, the revenue for the school comes in through basketball. So I get that. But I think there's got to be some balance, and to be able to go home and spend time with your wife, to go home and watch your kids grow up and be at their events is also important. And sometimes I think as college coaches, they just kind of sit around the office and are just playing office. They're not doing really as much as what they need to be doing. They could be at home spending that time with their families. So while I understand it's a cutthroat business and you have to work, I think there needs to be a little more balance in how that works out, because these college coaches can drive themselves crazy. And, I just think, spending time away from the office is good for the mind as well.
Yeah, times have sure changed, because Al McGuire used to say in the 60s and 70s, if you can't get it done by 5 p.m., you're in the wrong profession. Go do something else.
Yeah, I mean I think that's accurate. I mean, at some point you've put your work in, you've recruited, you've prepared, but maybe you're preparing for the game, and at some point you've done your job, and then it's on the players, and that's the thing as a coach and as a player, you're only as good as your players, and once you get them motivated, especially at the college level, I know you have to, a lot of it is relationships and motivation. When you get to professional level, that stuff is more, the guys are already motivated, they know what they have to get, the job that needs to be done. But, when you're 18 to 22, there takes motivation.
Right.
Because, kids are inconsistent with their level of work, with what's going on, outside of basketball. It affects them more. And I get that. I was there. But also there needs to be a balance between work and, home life.
You came to Marquette in, I think it was 2001. That was your first year, 2001, 2002.
Correct.
And had you ever played against DWade, or had you just heard about DWade? When was the first time you saw him? Because he was sitting out that your senior year in high school. He was sitting out the year at Marquette. And what was your first impressions, or when did you first hear about him and watch him play?
Well, when Marquette was recruiting me, it'd been a tough few years for Marquette leading up to that point, and I wanted to go to a program that had a chance to be really successful and win championships. So, Crean was obviously telling me on the fact that they had this kid sitting out that was a program changer, and in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, that's what every coach says. We have this guy, he's going to change the program. So you don't really believe it. And then, when you see DWade for the first time, and you're blown away by his athleticism, his IQ, his work ethic. So it didn't take long for me to realize, like, I thought going into college, I thought I understood basketball, and to see him, in pickup games and in drills, it was pretty easy to know that he was going to be special. He had the total package. DWade, people think he was just given all this, but he worked extremely hard. He had kind of an old school game where he had floaters. He'd use the backboard extremely well. And, he just had this quiet confidence about him in college. Obviously that's developed now, but in college, he was quiet, but he still had this confident aura about him that, he could get the job done.
I remember watching him the year he sat out. He was in a drill where he took 30 jump shots from the free throw line. I counted, he hit 3 of them. His outside shot was a work in progress. And you talk about a work ethic to get to be an iconic. Mark Jackson just called him, I saw on Twitter last week, Mark Jackson said DWade was probably one of the top 30 basketball players of all time in the NBA. That's amazing. And when we would talk when I would talk to him, before his second year, I mentioned there are two types of players. There are the players who are superstars from 5th grade on, and everybody kind of kisses up to them. And then there's the other kind, the late developers, the guys that had to work for it, and they treat success differently, and you're the latter. And he agreed with that and commented on it. And he was always a great interview, soft-spoken, but terrific interview.
Yeah, I mean, he had to fight for everything. You know, he wasn't, first off, coming, you know, growing up, he had come from a tough background, and playing AU basketball, he was 8th, 9th man on his team. He wasn't highly recruited. Pretty much Marquette was the only above average program at the time to recruit him. He's a Prop 48 guy, so he had to sit out, and so nothing was ever given to him. And when you have to go through those stages and really work at it and watch yourself get better, and watch people around you tell you that you're not as good as players that you're going against, it motivates you. And I think for DWade and for a lot of us on that team, that's kind of the story that it was. And that's where we had this, collective, toughness about us, where, DWade, obviously everyone knows his story, but, there's, several other stories of guys in our team that kind of had that, same type of story.
We're talking with Travis Diener on the Pip and Dodds podcast. We're going to take a break. We are holding Travis hostage in an automobile, and we'll continue to interview him for the third segment right after this break.